Your favorite PGA and LPGA legends, pros and top instructors are right here every week on Next on the Tee. Join Chris as the greats of the game share their stories, insights and playing lessons. Now, back to Chris and more of the show.
All right, now back with me here on the French Lick Resort guest line is my good friend Chris Czaja. Let me remind you about Chris's background. He's from Greenwich, Connecticut, played his college golf at East Carolina University, and earned his degree in marketing. He's been a PGA golf instructor for the last 26 years at Boca West Country Club in Boca Raton, Florida. He has been named the 2010 PGA Teacher of the Year for the South Florida section and named the Southeast Florida PGA Teacher of the Year as well. Chris has coached players on the PGA Tour, the Web.com Tour, the Canadian Tour, and the LPGA Tour as well. Additionally, many of his juniors are now playing college golf. He has been a swing fix instructor and contributor doing videos, analysis, and writing articles for the Golf Channel, and I'm very honored he's back with me again tonight here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Chris, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, good evening, Chris. Thank you for the invite again. It's great to be on your show.
So it's been a minute, my friend, since we've got to spend some time with you. Catch us up. What's been going on with you over the last several months?
Well, I tell you what, I've been super busy, just teaching every day at Boca West and Boca Raton, and we've only had a couple of rainouts, so it's been a great season so far. We're seeing a lot of new faces and a lot of people returning to Boca West, and it's been great. It's very exciting, and I'm just staying super busy and looking forward to this great 2019. We're real excited for this upcoming season.
And Chris, talking about Boca West, right? I mean, it's a beautiful looking place, and I've certainly looked at it online. Yeah, for our listeners who aren't familiar with it, tell them all about it.
Well, it's located in Palm Beach County, and Palm Beach County is a real golf mecca. It's just it's an amazing place for golf and a lot of other things. And Boca West has 4 unbelievable golf courses. It's the number one equity club in Florida, and it's rated now a platinum club. It's number 15 worldwide as far as golf clubs. So we're very proud of that, and it's a super nice place. So anybody that's in the area or may come down to South Florida, please give me a call at Boca West. We'd love to have you come out and play some golf, take a lesson, and check the place out. It's really something special. And
Chris, I want to get some tips from you tonight, and I want to start by the video that you shared with me a little bit earlier today regarding pre-shot routine. Talk about your routine and how can we develop one of our own and why it's important to have one.
Well, I think the pre-shot routine is often overlooked, and I think to play your best golf, you really need to work on a pre-shot routine and become more consistent on your approach to every shot you hit. Was saying about, visualizing the shot and looking more at the target when you're practicing and training and when you get on the golf course. I'm a big believer in that. And the video you're referencing is a video that we produced and sent out to our club members, and then it finds its way onto social media. And it's a great way to share short instructional tips with our membership and then share it with the social media platform. And I learned in college when I was playing for East Carolina, that was one of the things that I picked up is developing a pre-shot routine. And one of the reasons I really started working on my pre-shot routine was just to become a faster player because, unfortunately, I was known as a slow player. And when that was brought to my attention by my peers, I figured, okay, I need to develop a routine that would get me to hit the shots consistently at the same elapsed time. And I found I started playing better golf when I started really focusing on that routine. So my routine typically starts with, obviously surveying the shot or what's in front of me, looking down the target line, but down to where when it's go time, when it's time to hit the shot, I take 4 steps to the ball. I look twice at my target, and then after the second look at the target, that becomes the swing trigger for me, and I start my swing right from there. And it takes about 13 seconds for me to go through the routine, so I'm well within a lot of time in tournament play, 40 seconds to hit a shot. But the key was really to do 2 things, become more consistent, but also to pick up the pace of play.
Chris, I want to talk about some other stroke savers that we can do. What is something that most of us amateurs don't do, and we're throwing away strokes because we're not doing it? What are some of those stroke savers that you've noticed amongst your students over the years that you think, boy, we got to get this word out a little bit more. We need our amateurs doing more of this and less of that.
Well, that's a super question, Chris. The number one thing, without a doubt, is to control the pace of your putts. From 10 feet away, on average, a professional player is going to make 40% of their 10-footers. From there, when we move outside of that range, if we're only making 40% from 10 feet, let's say we're 20 or 30 feet away, the percentages go way down. So an amateur golfer, over time, can learn how to putt more like a pro. But number one, they have to learn how to control the pace. So when they're outside of a 10-foot range, let's just say, they need to just be trying to get down in 2 and just work on speed control. To control your speed as a golfer when you putt, one of the first things you have to learn is how to hit the ball on the sweet spot consistently on your putter. So that when I'm working with students on distance control through their lesson program, it will come up as far as the putter, the equipment they're using, because we really need to hit the ball on the sweet spot consistently to then learn how to control the pace of the putt. So the number one is for amateur golfers to work on your distance control of your putting and learn how to roll the ball, just getting it close to the hole so you can reduce the 3 putts. Myself and other professional players, when we're, let's say, 30 feet or closer, it's rare that we're going to 3-putt. When I look at amateur golfers from the same distance, they're 3-putting all the time from 20, 30 feet. So right away, that's a score builder that we can easily correct with the proper training.
And Chris, to that point, is there a drill or something that you do to help you make sure you're hitting it on the sweet spot of the putter every time?
Well, a couple of things I do. Number one, it's very simple. I take either take a range ball with a stripe on it, or I take one of the Pro V's out of my bag and I put a line on it, or put a line where the logo is. And when I hit the putt exactly on the sweet spot and hit the ball squarely, the ball will roll on the seam of the ball, of the stripe. So if you imagine a range ball, if you put it on the ground so the stripe is pointing right down the target line and the putt's relatively flat, when you stroke the putt, let's say you start at 6 feet or 8 feet, when you hit it squarely, the ball will roll like a wheel, like a tire, right on that seam, and then you know you're hitting it square. If you hit it off center, or the face angles off a little bit the ball, you'll immediately see that there's a little side rotation on the ball. So that's one good drill. Another one that I like to do is I actually videotape my putting stroke with the camera very low, so I can actually see and do a slow-mo and watch how my putter is hitting the ball. And that gives me a real good visualization and also very good feedback as to whether or not I'm hitting the sweet spot or not.
And Chris, if someone like me came to you and said, hey, I want to break 80. I'm dedicated to breaking 80. How would you help me break 80?
Well, the first thing I would do, once you brought that to my attention and watched you on the range, is I would introduce the playing lesson to you. I would take you out on the golf course and actually watch how you play on the golf course, or I'd either play with you or just watch how you play the course and just see what I notice. And I'm a big believer in the on-course instruction. I just finished an article for PGA Magazine that'll be coming out in March. I hope everybody can check that out. And I talk about that as far as how I work with golfers and introduce the playing lesson as part of the lesson program. When golfers have that as a goal, or in your case, if that's your goal to break that barrier, I have to see what you're doing on the golf course to help you identify the areas that need the most work.
And to that end, Chris, and that's something that we have started talking about a little bit more on the show, there is a very big difference between practicing your swing on the practice range and then actually playing the game of golf. So when you're out watching your students play, on the course, what are the things that you're looking for? Are you looking for, how I'm attacking the golf course, if I'm able to hit the ball on the right side of the fairways and give myself the correct angles? How are you assessing whether I'm actually, good at playing the game?
Well, I like to have golfers, when going to golf course, limit their shots to one ball. I'd like to see them hit one ball tee to green and not get in the habit of just immediately reloading another ball. I want to see how they handle different situations and see just firsthand what their game is really like. And when I get an opportunity to play with my students over a period of time, that's very, very helpful. Or for the tournament players that I coach, watching them actually in tournament play and making notes from what I observe while they're that's very helpful as well. But again, at Boca West, we have 4 just super, super golf courses in perfect shape, and the greens are rolling at 11, 12 on a daily basis, and everything is just beautiful. I'd love to take students on the golf course and watch and to see how they're doing and really get them comfortable with the on-course instruction, and that's very, very helpful.
And Chris, you talked about a pre-shot routine a moment ago, but before you start your round of golf, is there a warm-up routine that you go through? How should we be getting prepared for our rounds of golf?
Well, I saw a video recently about Tiger Woods' pre-shot, or his pre-round ritual, and they went over how many shots he hit with what clubs and how many putts he took and so on and so on. And I believe it was 147 total swings that he made in his pre-shot, his pre-round warm-up. And of those shots, 80% were from 100 yards or closer. So he was hitting a lot of putts, a lot of chips, a lot of pitches, less than full shots. And that was his, consistent routine that he would do before tournament play. So when you think of the best player that's played the game and that's how they warm up, that's a good model right there. And I learned early in my career as a collegiate player and as a professional player, I would observe what some of the other players were doing. When I was, let's say at a tournament, if I saw somebody who, I thought really knew what was going on and I'd watch how they would warm up, I often noticed that other professional players were starting off with, a lot of short swings. So I incorporated that into my pre-round ritual where I would, go to the range first, but when I hit the driving range after doing some stretching, I would start off and just chip and pitch the ball from the practice tee. I wouldn't take full swings. Now that I'm a little bit older, I sometimes start off and take fuller swings at, less than full speed just to stretch out a little more, but golfers can really benefit from just getting the feel of the short shots, maybe even starting off and do some putting for a few minutes before they do the chipping and pitching. But it's very, very important just to get the feel in your hands, just the feel of the club and work it from there. And don't just hit, full shots with drivers in your warm up. But, to see Tiger's routine where he hit, the overwhelming majority of his shots were less than full swings and certainly a lot of putts and chips. That really kind of is an eye opener for most players.
You mentioned, stretching out a moment ago. Are there some stretches that you do before you do any of that to kind of loosen up your muscles?
Well, I do stretch. I like to stretch out my forearms and wrists and shoulders first. So I make sure I take some time to stretch out those areas. And then I'm a big believer in hamstring stretching for good posture and hip flexor stretches. So I kind of hit those areas, the hamstrings, the hip flexors, and the wrists. And I had a shoulder injury a few years ago, so I'm always aware of that just to make sure, I warm up the upper body as well.
Chris, a couple more before we let you go. And you mentioned the short game. And that's an area that a lot of us amateurs lose strokes around the green. So I want to talk about chipping for a moment. Talk about ball position, setup. How should we be positioning our bodies and our setups so that we are hitting good, crisp chip shots and we're getting the ball as close to the hole as possible?
Well, one of the things I like to teach golfers is to try to keep the ball as low to the ground as you possibly can for the short game shot. So if I'm looking at a situation around the green and I think I can keep the ball really low, I'm either going to putt it or I'm going to take, a 7-8 iron and just keep the ball flight low so I don't have to manipulate the club quite so much. Now, if someone gave me, if I took out my lob wedge and someone said, hit the lob wedge as low as you hit a 7-iron, well, I could do that, but that requires moving the ball back in the stance, creating a lot of shaft lean, and kind of manipulating the club itself to send the ball at a lower trajectory. Now, to keep it simple, if I took a less lofted club, a 5-iron, a 6-iron, a 7-iron, and did a simple one lever type chipping action, I can keep the ball very low to the ground without having to really manipulate the club quite so much. So, one of the ideas I always try to stress to students is you try to take not only the simplest shot, but you try to keep the ball as low to the ground as you can to control the distance and the direction. Take the air out of the shot. Don't throw it up in the air unless you have to. So that's a very good tip for the amateurs out there listening in, or the professional players that, sometimes just grab a sand wedge and try to put some loft on the shot. Well, just remind yourself to take the lower shot and keep it as simple as you can, and you'll get the ball much closer to the pin. Now let's talk a little bit about the rule changes. What are your thoughts on some of these rule changes we're seeing?
Yeah, that's been a hot topic, and I tell you, there are a couple of things. One, I'm always entertained by guys with the new drop rule coming from the knee on how they're contorting their bodies to get the drop from knee height. I still don't understand why we needed to go away from dropping it at shoulder height down to the knee height. And then with the flag stick rule, putting with the flag stick in, I'm struggling a little bit with that, Chris. I mean, I know that hey, I keep the flag stick in when I'm chipping from off the green, and it's certainly helpful if you might get a little bit too much speed on the ball. That sort of thing can slow it down, knock it down, keep yourself close to the hole. I don't understand why you would keep the flag stick in on a 20-foot putt unless you're at Augusta National or Oakmont and it's rolling 14 on the stimp and it's a straight downhill.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. Outside of that, I'm sort of struggling with it. What are your thoughts?
Well, I have a few. I think there's a high probability. My guess is going to be they're going to switch that rule back for professional play. I think it's a definite advantage to leave the stick in. So the flag stick's in and you're on the green and you're using that to your advantage. I think that's taking a little bit of the skill out of it. So I'd like to see, if I were in charge, I'd go back to the way we had it before and not allow players to leave the stick in, because it's such an advantage to have it in. Let's say for a pro golfer, when I hit a putt too hard, it's usually a long putt. So if I hit a 80-footer with too much pace and it wraps into the stick and deflects off 2 or 3 feet from the hole, well, in that case, that flag stick helped me because I'm going to 2-putt. If the flag stick were out and I hit it with that much pace, maybe I would go 10 or 12 feet by the hole. Maybe I'm going to miss the comebacker because, again, as a professional player, I'm only going to make 40% from 10 feet. So right there, it's kind of the proof that the flag stick's an advantage. So my feeling is that in professional golf, we should be playing by different rules than the amateurs play, just the same as in other sports. In high school football might have different rules than the NFL. The NBA is playing by a different 3-point line than they do in high school. So why would professional golfers play by the same rules as amateur golfers? So I think there should be some talk to have the PGA Tour and the PGA look at the rules for the professionals and make them different than what the amateurs are playing. No, I just think at the club level, if it's an advantage, to anchor your putter, let the club player do that. If it's an advantage for the flag stick to be in and it speeds up play for the amateur player, let them do that. But for professionals, I don't think it's going to take long for them to switch that rule back. And as far as some of the other ones, as far as the dropping and touching the sand and things like that, again, I think there should be some talk about having the rules a little different for professional play than amateur play.
It's interesting. You're one of the first people to come on and talk about the desire for bifurcation. I think there's a lot of room for bifurcation, whether it's the rules, whether it's the equipment. You mentioned, the different 3-point lines, in high school, college, and at the NBA level. We know that they use different bats. They use different bats in Little League and high school and college ball than they do at the major league level. So the idea that the PGA Tour could not do bifurcation for equipment is clearly all based on the manufacturers and not because it's unprecedented in sports. So yeah, I find that a very interesting topic to discuss.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And when they, like, let's look at the Masters, for example. I'll be very surprised if they allow the pros to leave the flag stick in at Augusta. I don't think they're going to do it. I think there's going to be a local rule, and they're going to have to take the flag stick out. That's my feeling. But I think there should be some talk about that. I mean, if it's within the rules and I can leave the stick in, I'm leaving it in on every putt because I do think it's an advantage, and especially. Well, like what we've known, when you're off the green, it's an advantage to leave it in. So when you're on the green, it definitely is an advantage. And I find it's a little easier to aim at the stick anyway than when there's no stick there. But, I would encourage the amateurs, as long as it's within the rules, to leave the stick in, because it can help for sure.
Chris, before we let you go, remind our listeners, how can they stay up to date with all the things you're doing, whether it's following you online or it's on social media?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. They can find me, on the PGA sites, and to stay current with, what I'm up to, just, look me up online, give me a call at Boca West. I'm there year round. That's probably the best way to contact me. Just, go on, contact me at Boca West or through, my website, ChristianCzaja.com. They can contact me directly there, or I can be reached at, 833 PGA Golf. That's a line that can connect listeners with me. But definitely, please, when you're down in Florida or you want to make a trip, feel free to contact me. I'd love to work with you, and that's the best way to contact me through there.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming back and being a part of the show again tonight. Always good to spend some time with you. Look forward to the next time that you'll come back. I hope that's real soon.
Anytime. It's my pleasure, and all the best this year to you. And your show is great. I enjoy listening to it. And again, thank you. It's been an honor to be on your show. Thank you, Chris.
I appreciate you, Chris. Take care. All the best to you and your family, my friend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's the great Christian Czaja. So Chris Czaja, Czaja is Czaja. Go look him up online. You can also find him on social media. Always a good time talking to Chris. A lot of great playing lessons there. And looking forward to having him back on the show again real soon. All right, I've got my next guest, Tom Patry, hanging on the line. Going to get to Tom on the other side of this message because this segment of the show is brought to you by our friends at the PGA Tour Superstore.